Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are completely reframing the whole concept of equanimity. Seriously, forget that tired cliche of a mystical monk sitting silently on a distant mountaintop. We're tossing that out. Instead, we're going to look at this entirely through the lens of modern biology, defining equanimity as a highly practical, down-to-earth state of homeostasis. It's going to be a fascinating ride.
We're starting off with this incredibly powerful paradox from Buddhism's Lotus Sutra. It reads, "When living beings see great fires burning, this land of mine is tranquil and calm." It really poses the ultimate question, doesn't it? How on earth can someone possibly find safe sanctuary, true calm, while the world around them is literally being consumed by fire? It seems impossible.
So, to figure this out, let's dive right into the biology of sentience, moving all the way from amoebas up to human awareness.
Now, you know that for decades, Western philosophy has wrestled with the famous hard problem of consciousness, trying to somehow bridge the physical matter of the brain with our subjective, inner experience. But if we look at Arthur Reber's work in cellular biology, we actually get a completely different starting point. Sentience isn't some late-stage evolutionary magic trick that just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. No, it's a hardwired, emergent survival response to impermanence. It's built right in.
In fact, sentience is life's absolute minimal expression. Think about it for a second. An amoeba detects a temperature gradient and it moves. A bacterium senses a chemical signal and it adjusts itself. These aren't just clever metaphors for sentience, they literally are sentience. A rigid, unfeeling system in a world of constant flux? Well, that's a dead system. To survive at all, an organism has to register change and respond to it.
Which brings us to the mechanics of chronic dissatisfaction, specifically the path from functional survival to actual suffering. Okay, so you're probably wondering, how does a basic functional survival response turn into the chronic suffering we all experience on a daily basis? Well, Buddhism identifies a very specific progression here. Step 1 is called Vedana. That's our feeling tone, just simply registering an experience as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Step 2 is Tanha, which is where we reactively crave the pleasant stuff or desperately recoil from the unpleasant stuff. And eventually, this biological reflex totally overshoots into Step 3, Dukkha. That is a state of chronic dissatisfaction and emotional dysregulation.
So, here is the absolutely crucial point. Dukkha happens when our internal gradient detector stops just registering conditions and actually goes to war with impermanence itself. It's an organism demanding that pleasant things never ever leave and unpleasant things never ever arrive. And, as we all know too well, reality simply declines to cooperate with that demand.
Moving on to equanimity as homeostasis, how we go about finding that perfect gyroscopic balance.
This brings us to a pretty radical redefinition. We can actually define equanimity purely functionally. Equanimity is simply homeostasis at the level of consciousness. It's exactly what any sentient system naturally achieves when it just stops adding secondary distortion to its registration of reality. It's biological health, folks. It's not just some lofty moral virtue.
I like to think of it like a fast-spinning gyroscope, maintaining perfect balance no matter what wild counterforces are applied to it. It is a beautifully regulated, mindful engagement with feeling, completely without being reactive. The system registers what arises, it registers its passing, and it just stays perfectly in balance through the whole shebang.
Now, this concept brilliantly illustrates a trap we almost all fall into at some point. We have these so-called near enemies of equanimity, things like indifference, apathy, and detachment. From the outside, someone experiencing these might look totally zen, right? But these are actually dangerous forms of withdrawal. They might feel like spiritual practice, but they're really just an escape from reality. They aren't engagement at all. Then, on the flip side, we have the far enemies of equanimity, craving and aversion. What these show us is that reactivity isn't some sort of moral failure. Not at all. It is simply an organism making a biological calibration error. The organism that grasps has overshot the mark. The organism that recoils has overcorrected. They are just fundamentally out of homeostasis.
Now, let's explore the threefold truth and how it completely dissolves the architecture of materialism.
So what stable ground does this gyroscopic balance actually stand on? Well, a 6th century philosopher named Zhi Shiyi solved this puzzle with his threefold truth. He realized that reality isn't stacked in levels where the spiritual floats safely above the physical. Not at all. Instead, reality is empty, meaning it lacks inherent existence, while at the exact same time being conventionally real, functioning as causes and effects. And then there's the middle, which means the empty and the conventional truths mutually and seamlessly contain each other, with absolutely no remainder.
This completely changes our perspective, doesn't it? It means that the tranquil ground and the burning land are the exact same reality, simply experienced with different biological calibration. The fire and the tranquility are happening at the exact same time, in the exact same place. Equanimity is possible precisely because its stability is not separate from the impermanence it's responding to.
Next up, love without conditions, looking at the Brahmavihara's progression. So if the threefold truth explains why this balance is structurally possible, how does it actually look in our daily lives? We usually think of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity as four totally separate virtues. But really, a fundamental posture of loving kindness, or metta, acts as the core foundation for all of them. When metta meets suffering, it naturally becomes compassion. When it meets flourishing, it becomes sympathetic joy. And when metta meets the whole unpredictable, messy flux of existence without demanding a single thing, it becomes equanimity. Therefore, equanimity isn't some cool, distant, or detached version of love. Quite the opposite. It is metta fully matured. It's a profound, deep love that has simply stopped requiring conditions because it has finally fully understood the impermanent nature of reality.
It gets it.
Finally, let's look at the tranquil ground in the burning land. This is a cosmic scale calibration.
Bringing this all the way back to that burning house parable we started with, the father stands at the door calling his children out. The absolute crucial takeaway here is that he is fully embedded in the exact same burning reality we are. He feels what we feel, but he can act clearly and decisively because his internal response to the fire is not itself on fire.
And this leads us right to the breathtaking discovery of this entire framework. Samsara, when fully understood, is no different from nirvana. Awakening is never about escaping from this messy, impermanent world to find some permanent realm beyond change. That's a myth. Instead, it is the incredible realization that this changing world, when met with perfect biological calibration, is liberation itself.
So I want to leave you with this final thought today. The fire burns, yet the ground is tranquil. As the fires of daily life inevitably burn around you, and they for sure will, can you find the tranquil ground simply by recalibrating your own internal response? It's something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.